Welcome to the 2018 CTR Program Report webinar. Thanks for joining, and my name is Olivia Holden. I'm pretty new to Commute Seattle. I joined the team in the beginning of June and am a commute trip reduction specialist at Commute Seattle. Some of you may know me because I've been emailing you about CTR program requirements or have been working with you directly one-on-one to build a commuter benefits package or work on reducing your drive-alone rate with your company. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get rolling. To chat or respond to any questions I ask the group, you may press the little chat icon box in the Join Me window. Then a little chat box will appear, and you can move that around to what fits your screen best for you to view the rest of the presentations. If you're calling in by phone, I suggest logging on to the Join Me app so you're able to view the slides. This will be uploaded to the Commute Seattle website and YouTube page afterwards, but there's some really fruitful and significant information for completing the program reports, so the slides are a great supplement and will only benefit the webinar. And just to let you all know, you're all muted, so I don't have any feedback coming through with the different calls and such. And also, there's just a slight delay with the webinar, so as I'm talking, you might be a couple seconds behind, or questions might come in a couple seconds behind. All right, so let's jump in. What we're going to cover today is the purpose of the program report, what it is, the time frames and pinch points when you're completing the program report, and review any questions, comments, or concerns you may have. When you're looking at the questions and not knowing some information, we can cover those individual detailed questions that you have at the end of the webinar too. So, Commute Seattle, our mission is to foster mobility partnerships and services to keep Seattle moving and thriving for all. And we do that across the metro region, and our vision there is to have a more livable and thriving metro region underwritten by a broad community commitment to support mobility choices. So Commute Seattle is a public-private partnership founded by the Downtown Seattle Association, King County Metro, Sound Transit, and the Seattle Department of Transportation. Together, we foster those mobility partnerships and keep Seattle moving and thriving for all, like I mentioned. So what does that mean exactly? We work with a number of clients across the Puget Sound to ensure commuters and employers know all of their options on how to get from A to B. Alongside that, we work with employers to reach targets and goals regarding congestion and single occupancy driving, as well as consult on excellent commuter benefit packages. You may hear a phrase quite often when working with Commute Seattle or see it referenced in the surveys a lot, and that is CTR, or commute trip reduction. This refers to a state law passed in 1991 that requires large employers of 100 and more employees to mitigate the traffic impacts of their business by working to reduce driving. So does that make sense to everyone? Feel free to respond to the chat box if you're familiar with the CTR law. We won't spend too much time on that, but I want to make sure that kind of the requirements of the program and requirements of the CTR law are clear before we jump into one of the requirements being the program report. So Commute Seattle, the commute trip reduction team, what we do is a broad array of things, anywhere from trainings like this one. We connect employers with the appropriate vendors and commuter best practices, provide data analysis and technical expertise, as well as recommend employer-commuter program best practices. We facilitate peer-to-peer connections or comparisons to companies similar to yours. We recommend mitigations for traffic and construction impacts, like the upcoming Alaska Way viaduct closure and demolition, and we provide individualized consultations and step-by-step instructions for CTR program requirements. So this infographic here is just a mode split of 2017 commuter data. So in 2017, we saw that the commute trip reduction law was working very well. So we only had 25% of commuters coming in to the center city at peak times, so between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m., that only 25% of those were driving alone. So So that means the other 3/4 of commuters are taking a commute option. So they're taking rideshare, carpooling, vanpooling, riding in Liftline or Uber Pool, walking to work, taking transit, or even telework or flex scheduling, which are all great ways to reduce your drive alone rate and lower the impact of your company's business on traffic and congestion. Seattle's growth in construction isn't news to anyone, but the opportunity of change is something that can be embedded into the work that you do as an employee transportation coordinator. Many of our clients have seen growth over the last decade, meaning they're expanding and more people are working for them, and they have an awesome opportunity to change behavior as people are entering their workforce and entering the new job titles that they're filling. So in this graphic, you can see the increase in jobs over the last 7 years, from 2010 to 2017, has grown close to 260,000 at this point in time. So we've had an increase of about 25,000 jobs in the last year based on this graphic. But alongside that increase in population and increase of commuters coming to Seattle, we saw a great decrease in the drive alone rate, close to 5%, from about 30% to about 25% for 2017. And that number is just dropping, especially with the abundance of transportation options that we have in the city of Seattle. So as an employee transportation coordinator, I'd like to open up a question and just have you think about it a little bit on how you can leverage Seattle's growth and development and influence employees' behavior change. So this could be, as new hires are coming on board, you can have a robust new hire orientation, a ride-along bus program where you take them on the bus from A to B to get them where they're going, as well as follow-ups to those new hires. So a week out, how are they doing? A month out, are they doing any better? 6 months out down the line, and so on. So what's in it for you, and what's so significant about the program reports as a CTR, commute trip reduction requirement? They provide us significant and up-to-date commuter information. They give you the opportunity to receive peer-to-peer industry and network comparisons. They also give you an awesome opportunity to engage your higher-ups in leadership and have them in the know about how your employees are getting to work and what the constraints or opportunities might be around that. It also keeps you in compliance with the commute trip reduction law, as I previously mentioned, and you also get the awesome opportunity to be a part of our Commute Trip Reductions Champions Recognition Program. That is an annual event and an ongoing program through the CTR program. So as I mentioned, with the Champions recognition, we also do something in-house at Commute Seattle where we feature employers in an employer case study. This example here is Delta Dental. And between 2016 and 2017, Delta Dental saw over a 50% SOV rate decrease, mostly due to their relocation from outside the center city into South Lake Union. But they took this opportunity of change and relocation as a way to engage their employees from the get-go and understand what they really wanted out of their commuter benefits. And this ranged from lunch and learns to practice commutes to instituting a progressive remote work policy. So not only flexible scheduling, but creating core work hours, a set amount of time where employees have to be in office or online and available to chat with other employees. And most importantly, commuters played a role in shaping the company's future, which cultivated pride and excitement. So Delta Dental was able to retain a lot of their employees with this move, which they were very concerned about whenever they started on this new endeavor. Furthermore, into 2018 Champions, so we just had this event not too long ago where we featured a number of employees and employers from a number of different industries across the city of Seattle. The Seattle Times from South Lake Union and Uptown won a Platinum Award. The University Bookstore, which is a retail industry at UW, won an award in the University District. We saw some government agencies that sometimes struggle with commute trip reduction. We saw them perform really well in the Platinum and Silver awards levels as well. A Place for Rover, where you take your dog when you go to work, achieved a drive alone rate of 30% or below their network target, so they're performing really well and received a Silver Award there. This event is really great to engage with your leadership, invite them to engage with our leadership at Commute Seattle, and take home an award and kind of take your pride and flaunt all of the hard work that you do as an employee transportation coordinator. Also, another reason to care about CTR in the program report is professional development. I don't know how many of you are interested and read the weekly news blast, but we often post jobs in the network, such as at Seattle Children's right now or CBRE. So it's a great way to network with your colleagues and coworkers and people like you around the city. We have an upcoming BOMA event scheduled for September 12th between 8:30 and 11:30, and this is a 3-hour credit earning course. So if you're a BOMA member, this is great to keep your professional development going and network with folks around the city. It'll also be a great opportunity to learn about the many construction projects and impacts that are happening across the city to engage your employees and make sure that they know the accurate and most up-to-date information about those projects and how it will influence their commute over time and not just in the immediate future. So previously I mentioned some awesome peer-to-peer comparisons and industry comparisons. Commute Seattle has been working with one of our clients, Tableau, to develop an in-house tool where we can better demonstrate all of the data that we receive from the program reports and the commuter surveys. I'm just going to exit my screen here and bring up a new tab to be able to show you what we've been working on with Tableau and our tool. Let me get this going here. So there's a couple different things in the Tableau tool that we're able to demonstrate with your program report and commuter data. We've got a performance dashboard as well as the network and industry scorecard. So this one, the network and industry scorecard kind of compares you to your different industries. So if you're a retail employer, someone in the similar industry as you, as well as your neighborhood and adjacent properties or employers as well. And the performance dashboard kind of lines up where your employees are coming from. So it puts them all on the map and you can see the density of such. Give me a moment here. Sorry about that, we're just getting things refreshed. There we go. So this is the King County Administration Building, and you can see that it performs pretty well to demonstrate the main topics out of that Washington State Department of Transportation PDF that we often bring to client consultations. So it's a more visually represented way to demonstrate employee commuter data as well as your program report data. So at the top, you'll see your drive alone rate for King County Admin Building is 18.71%, and their response rate is well above the 50% response rate minimum. And you can see some of the closest transportation amenities and infrastructure that are around their building. So they have a bus stop is at the site, a bike stop or a bike path goes through their site, and the closest train station is also at the site as well. The map here will show a density of where employees are coming from. So if you go to the densest blue area on the map here, you'll see that in this zip code, 18 respondents from King County Admin are coming from this zip code. This information is really helpful in doing carpool and vanpool ride matching and being able to connect individual employees with one another, which will end up decreasing your drive alone rate in the long run. So this is an aggregate mode split. You can see here that the most used mode for King County Admin is transit, which probably has a great deal to do with their proximity to transportation options and the bus mall. This will also tell you the total number of miles traveled by your employees per day. That's an important note to make here when you're looking at this data. If we go back to the scorecard for King County Admin, you'll be able to look at this and see the check marks and X's will describe what benefits you offer your company and for your employees. So you can see that they offer Orca Passport with a 50% or more subsidy, but they don't offer additional bicycle benefits. So those are kind of the X's and checks in what they describe. Compared to their network, which is downtown for King County Admin, they have 60% of downtown employers are providing an Orca Passport with a 50% or more subsidy. And 71% of employers in the government industry are providing this benefit. So that's a little bit of how you can interpret this information. Commute Seattle will be hosting an additional Tableau training coming up as we deploy this tool on our website and create kind of an ETC corner for you all as well. And this, just to note, this information here is on 2016 program report information. So it'll take us a couple weeks to get the new 2018 program report data inputted in this. I was talking to the specialist who will update that information, and Patrick had mentioned that he just needs kind of a critical mass of data to be able to input the amount of information and get the new tool with 2018 data running. So definitely in the near future for that, and it gives you all kind of an incentive to get your program reports in, so we're able to update this tool and have really unique and individualized consultations for you all. I'm going to head back to the slide deck and get going on some new things too. So what is the program report? The program report is a part of the CTR program, and it's where all work sites report on commuter program information every 2 years. So you may have remembered doing a commuter survey last year, and you're like, why are we doing this again? I just did a commuter survey. Well, this is the supplement to that to be able to tell Commute Seattle and the Seattle Department of Transportation what you're doing to encourage commute options at your company and what measures you've taken in the last year. So what's the same about this year's commute trip reduction program report compared to the folks that have completed it before? For those that you might have completed in 2016, the questions are largely the same, but there is some new formatting, so it's not quite a cut and paste from your 2016 data or program report. You'll have to do a little bit more research, and the questions are framed a little differently, as well as the parking section is much more robust than the previous years. At any time, you can go to this link here and preview them on our website. I'll just click to take you to see what it looks like here. So it'll give you a great deal of information about what a CTR program report is, how often you have to submit it, what is the optional, now optional program report summary, what you can do if you need help. Our website tends to have a great deal of information for ETCs to help them work through the survey process, as well as the program report process, so it's not to be looked over. And if you keep scrolling, you'll be able to see the exact questions that we've outlined in the SurveyMonkey program report. This is great. I would do a Control-P and print this information and sit down at your desk and see what information you're able to answer off the bat and what questions you may need to work with another department on, or think a little bit more critically about, or even do a tad bit of field work to count the number of parking spots available. And then if you have questions, after you do a quick run through to see which ones you have, we're always here to help you work through those questions if you need more information or clarity on those. And just to mention that the deadline is October 1st, 2018 for the program reports. So we've got about a month to get those going, and I don't believe any of the information, if you have to work with a different department or seek out some additional help, should it take any more than a week to complete. But we'll dive into the details of this a little further and see what questions you all may have. As I mentioned, the program report summary is now optional. It's a commute trip reduction program report optional requirement. Although I need to mention that it is one of the easiest ways to fulfill the program report requirement in describing how you communicate with employees. So if you don't want to write 500 words in an open-ended comment in the SurveyMonkey, submitting a program report summary is a really easy way to fulfill that and describe how you communicate with your employees. So this can be, you can fulfill this requirement and input your information into the template that we have provided for you on the Commute Seattle website. You can also download it here with this link. And just to note that you can only upload a certain file format in the SurveyMonkey, so it'll only accept PDFs, Word docs, DocX, PNG, or GIF files. Who knew that SurveyMonkey likes GIFs, but apparently it loves them. So The one thing here is that you can't upload an Excel file, so you'll have to either take a screenshot of that or submit it directly to your transportation specialist here at Commute Seattle. If there's any questions on that, feel free to post them in the chat box, and my colleague Cooper here will help field some questions if you have any so far. Okay, so we're going to dive kind of right in to the program report, and instead of walking you directly through the SurveyMonkey, we had some feedback in 2016 that wasn't quite the most fruitful amount of time spent on that, so I've taken out the most critical parts of the SurveyMonkey questions for the program report and inputted them into this slide deck. So for company information, that's the first section in the program report, and it's fairly simple. It'll take you less than a day, probably less than an hour to complete. Sorry here, I'm getting used to the mouse and clicking. So what we're going to be asking you for company information is your company name and E-code, your contact information, so you, the employee transportation coordinator, as well as if there's a program manager in your company as well for transportation options, as well as the highest ranking officials, so who you report this information back to. Your employee count and the total number of employees, which includes full-time employees, so not contracted, not adjuncts, for those of you in a university setting. We've also added some definitions to this question in the SurveyMonkey to help provide some clarity there, as well as the CTR affected employees, so the full-time employees arriving at the worksite between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. And then also if you have any relocation or consolidation plans. So if your company is planning to move from downtown Seattle to Northgate, or if you're consolidating buildings, this is all information that we would like to know about to be able to help your business and your company in those moves or in that consolidation time. So out of these questions, what pinch points do you currently have with them, or what pinch points do you think others might have? Posing a question, but don't worry, I have the answer if you don't want to play in the chat box. So I heard back from some of my clients that mentioned that they don't know where their E-code lives and that they're not sure about the employee count. So your E-code, you're welcome to reach out to your Commute Seattle transportation specialist, and we can look up in your CTR plan and figure out your E-code for you. So that's one way. You can also look, if you have any documentation from the 2016 program report, it should be listed in there as well. In the employee count, I just want to head over to the SurveyMonkey PDF here to be able to show you the definitions that we inputted. So this, what you're viewing on the screen now, is just a printed PDF of the SurveyMonkey, so it's got all the questions in it. But for how many employees are at your work site, we're asking the total number of employees and the CTR affected employees. So total number of employees are full-time employees scheduled to be employed on a continuous basis, so for 52 weeks and for an average of 35 hours per week. So someone that is a full-time employee, regardless of their schedule or other characteristics. And then the CTR affected employees are full-time employees who begin their regular workday at an affected employer's worksite between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. on 2 or more weekdays for at least 12 continuous months, and who are not independent contractors and are scheduled to be employed on a continuous basis for 52 weeks for an average of at least 35 hours per week. And then the final definition we have, we just wanted to also define what a full-time employee is based on the CTR law, and that means an employee scheduled to be employed on a continuous basis for 52 weeks for an average of at least 35 hours per week. I know that is a lot of information and a lot of jargon around workforce, so if you have further questions about this, we're here to help. Please answer in the chat box and we'll be able to work with you directly there. Heading back to the slide deck here. Okay. And if there's not any questions about the company information, I'm just going to keep moving right along. The next section in the program report is about information in education. So we're going to be asking things like how you provide your contact information for employees, how you distribute information. So this kind of draws on the program report summary. So if you're distributing commuter information on an intranet site, maybe you have a commuter board in the break room, maybe you just send everything via emails, or maybe you have a drop-in time where employees can come visit you in your office. All of those are ways that you distribute and communicate to employees, and are great examples for that question. And then the follow-up one to that is the frequency of providing commuter information to employees. So how often do you communicate with them? Is it once a year, right before survey time? I hope not. If it's every day, you provide a little news blast about what's happening. Maybe you forward the weekly e-news blast that we put out every Thursday, which would be on a weekly basis. And then the final follow-up to that is the dates of your last employee communication, and we're looking for the last 3 dates. And the final thing here is that new hire transportation information. I kind of mentioned it previously about some ways to retain employees and engaging a new workforce. So how you interact with new hires, what kind of orientation materials are you providing for them, and so on. So some of the pinch points that we saw that we've seen so far with this are the dates of your last employee communication, and like I said, we're looking for the last 3 dates. So it'll just take a little bit of digging through your Gmail or Outlook to see when the last time you did a communication, or digging on your intranet site to see the last time you've deployed information. Again, looking for the last 3 dates there. And all of this information and education information should take less than a day, probably less than an hour for you all to complete in the SurveyMonkey. Okay, the next big section where it kind of gets into commuter benefits and transportation. So you'll see some jargon in here, and if there needs to be some clarification on words or what benefit is, please post the question in the chat box, and we'll be able to field those and get back to you during the webinar, or we can follow up with you individually if it needs some more research. So the third section here is transportation incentives and on-site amenities. So we're asking if you have a general transportation subsidy. So if you're providing kind of a one-and-done transportation subsidy for all employees that they can use on any mode of transportation. Aside from that, you might have an Orca business account where Commute Seattle, Mercedes Strobe might have helped you open an Orca business account for your employees. So we're asking if you have one of those and whether or not it's Orca Passport and you've given the benefit to all of your employees, or maybe you have Orca Choice and you've chosen a selection of employees and only are providing a number of those with the benefit. We're also asking you for the cash value of your Orca subsidy or the percentage of such. So if you provide folks $25 a month to go to their Orca card, that would be a cash value. But if you're providing a 50% subsidy on the Orca benefit, that's the way to describe it in percentage. And then the employee usage of the Orca benefit. So how many employees are taking advantage of this? You might have to work with HR or a financial department to see the numbers on this. So just some information to keep going on. A van pool subsidy and usage, if you're providing this, a carpool subsidy and bike subsidy and the usage of those as well. So you might have to work here with financials or HR to figure out the usage numbers and to be able to draw in on that. Pre-tax transportation benefit and pre-tax parking costs. So similar to healthcare, you might devote a portion of your income before taxes to devote to transportation. That's known as the pre-tax transportation benefit. We're also asking if employees are allowed to use this transportation benefit on parking costs. So if they're able to deduct, say, $5 a day before taxes on their paycheck to be able to pay for parking, we're asking that individually there. Also, the availability and options of flexible scheduling like telework, compressed work weeks, working from home, or maybe from a hotspot location. If you have any corporate accounts like Uber and Lyft, Reach Now or Car2Go, if you're providing any company shuttles, such as We Drive You or with NV Transportation, you might have a company bike share in-house where employees can take bikes out. You might also provide carpool matching services like with Scoop or Waze Carpool or Rideshare Online. And finally, with transportation incentives and on-site amenities, we'd like to learn a little bit about what your facilities are like. So how you encourage active transportation with showers, lockers, secure bike parking, potentially some car seats for borrow for folks to take a corporate vehicle home if their child is sick and they need to pick them up from school or daycare. And again, just asking you all in the audience what you think some pinch points are with this information. I have a few that are kind of troublesome with some of my clients already, and that being the cash value of the Orca subsidy. So working yourself through how much you provide in the subsidy for your Orca benefit, whether it's $25 for the entire year, and that's what the employee is paying, so how much your subsidy really equals out to. And then the employee usage. Like I said, you'll probably have to work with financials or HR to understand who actually is tapping on with their ORCA card to get a usage rate for that. We also have a pre-tax transportation specialist in-house, Nick Abel. So if you have questions regarding that, we're happy to connect you with him to be able to derive the accurate information that we're asking for in the program report. I know taxes are a little scary, so if you have questions on that, please reach out to your transportation specialist and we'll be able to help you through that. Also, working with financials or your budgeting person for the program would be a great person to talk to in-house at your company about this information. Okay, so as I mentioned kind of in the beginning of the webinar, we updated the program report parking questions, and they're a little bit more robust than what they were in 2016. So we're asking some more quantitative information about the parking that you provide as an employer. So just to run through the questions in kind of quick components of what we're asking in the program report is how available parking is to your employees. So if it's a free parking, or maybe they have to pay to get in the garage, but you reimburse them in their paycheck, or maybe you have an off-site parking garage, and then they walk the rest of the way to the building. And then also, like the ORCA subsidies and van pool and carpool subsidies, we'd like to know. Hold on, we got a question coming in on the chat box. I'd like to be able to field Lily's question here. Are you able to answer that? Just a moment, everyone. Lily has a question here in the chat box about if she can go into the survey, complete questions I know, the answers, and save it and come back to it. As far as I know, unfortunately, SurveyMonkey doesn't allow you to do this, and if you say submit it and you weren't all done, it won't let you come back and take it twice either, because it thinks you're repeating the survey. So my suggestion is to print the surveys from Commute Seattle website and be able to fill them in on paper or on a Word document, and then you can copy and paste those into the SurveyMonkey when you have all the information. It's a bummer that it doesn't let you do that, and it's something that we know of in-house, and we're trying to work to mitigate. But yes, that would be great to have, and unfortunately it's not available at this time. Okay. Before I was talking about parking, before Lily's question, and I was talking about the availability to employees of parking, so whether or not it's free parking or a subsidy or you have an off-site garage or lot. And we'd also like to know the parking usage of that. So similar to the ORCA benefit or van pool benefits, how many people are using a parking spot, and it can be a daily rate or a weekly rate or a monthly rate. Just please note that in the program report. And then the number of employees receiving parking spaces, so the folks that have a reserved parking space that they can count on every day. How many employees have that benefit? As well as the number of parking spaces provided by type, so the total number of parking spaces in your employer, in your parking lot or in your garage, the number of high occupancy vehicle spots, the number are shared or public, so spaces that you might lease for a daily rate, those will be included there. And then the number for low emission vehicles, like electric cars, as well as you might have Reach Now or Car2Go spots in your building. How many of those are for car share, as well as the electrical vehicle charging stations and handicap parking spots. So the number of parking spaces breaks out into different types, and we're asking the number for each of those categories there, as well as the total number. And then the daily cash value of leased parking spaces. So if you're offering shared or public spaces, how much are you charging for those per day for an individual to use it? And as you may guess, this information is going to take some time and legwork and research to find, all of which are kind of difficult to derive. So I suggest working through yourself through the questions in the printed form and working through the Word doc, coming up with the questions that you can answer off the bat, and then doing some research in the field. Yes, you might have to go into the parking garage and take some tallies of the numbers, but the good thing about that is that as long as no major infrastructure improvements or modifications are made to the parking garage, you'll have those numbers for next time we do this surveying. And we've got a few questions coming into the chat box, so I'd like to be able to work through folks with those. Dana is asking, is the parking information for 2018? The IRS changed the taxation on parking, and our firm has changed how parking is paid for 2018. That is a great question, Dana, and I would answer yes, the parking information is for 2018. So the current year, and it'll kind of set us a baseline for 2018 and what's happening currently in time for today. So if you've just made some parking changes, that's great, and that's information that we would like to know. And I'm going to pause here with parking and see if we have any more questions coming in. I know this is a pinch point for folks, and it'll require some legwork. I've put the time frame for deriving all of the information for parking is about a week. Some folks will know it offhand and they'll already have it in their system, and it'll take them no time. Other folks will have to do some research and work with different departments to be able to figure it out. As always, your Commute Seattle transportation specialist is here to help. So if you have questions about how we're defining this information or what information we need to derive from it, please let us know, and we'll be able to help you on an individual basis as well. All right, if there's no more questions, I'm going to move on from parking, and we can always come back to this slide or go to the SurveyMonkey and review them individually if time allows. The last section here, we're finishing out with more of an easy section for you all. It gets a little heavy in the middle of the program report, I know. The last section here is administration and engagement. So we're looking for some questions about how you administer the program, what you're doing at large as a company, your engagement with Commute Seattle as the staff and with your transportation specialist, and then your priorities moving forward. So we're asking you to put a number on how much you're spending for the Commute Trip Reduction Program. How much is it costing your business? How many staff members do you have? If you're paying those and not on a volunteer basis, what their salary is, and how much altogether the Commute Trip Reduction Program is costing your business. Information in here can include if you're paying for transportation fares or events like that, if you're giving a cash incentive to folks for commuting, all of that is a cost and associated with the Commute Trip Reduction Program. Also, if your employer has applied for the state tax credits, you can enter that information there. And if you haven't applied, it's a really easy way to benefit your employer at large, and we would love to talk to you more about that and connect you with Nick to be able to work through your employer and getting those tax credits for you all. And then engagement with Commute Seattle transportation specialists. So how often you're communicating with us over here on our end, and if you come to events, and when the last time you've done that. Your engagement with the weekly e-bass. So if you're forwarding it out to employees, how often and how frequently you're using that as a resource. At large, your company culture and leadership engagement around commute options. Some businesses, they're at the executive level, they support and encourage employees to use an active mode, for example, to get to work, and it's kind of embedded in their culture. We'd like to learn a little bit more about how you do this at company at large. And we have this as an open-ended question, so if you feel like you're writing too much, don't feel that way. We'd love to learn a little bit more about how your company is encouraging commute options and active modes of transportation at large. And then for the next year, we'd like to learn your top 3 priorities for commute options and what you have in the works for employees coming. So you might have a campaign in-house scheduled for the winter to encourage folks to get out of their cars and get on the bus, or you might be promoting Transit Month next summer or Bike Month. Any of those are some top priorities. You also might be working at improving some of the infrastructure to get to and from your company, working with the city to pave some bike lanes or improve some sidewalks. Anything like that is a great priority to mention here. The 2 kind of things that might be a pinch point or require you some time or digging to get are that annual estimated direct cost for your organization, as well as if you applied for employer state tax credits. You're welcome to work directly with financials to get this information and to be able to derive what you're looking for. If there's not questions on admin and engagement, I'm going to move on here and open things up to the crowd. We're doing pretty well on time. We have about 15 minutes scheduled for the webinar still for questions and comments or concerns. I'm happy to walk through the SurveyMonkey or explain a little bit more about the Tableau tool. Whatever the crowd would really like, I'm here to help. So I'll stay on the line here for the remainder of our hour with you all and field the questions and work with you all. My contact information and a fun little picture is at the end here. And I will be posting this webinar to the Commute Seattle YouTube page later today, so you'll be able to reference this, click on the links in the slides, and forward it to any employees that are working with you on this topic as well. Also, if you're done and you feel confident in completing the survey, feel free to hop off the webinar and the call. So we have a few questions coming in, and Cooper is responding to them in the chat box as far as I know. But just to answer them quickly over the phone here, one company is wondering how often companies have to complete the survey. So a part of the commute trip reduction program, the program report is every other year, so a biennial process. So the last time we would have completed this for your company would be 2016. And we usually, if things go well, complete the program reports in even years and do the commuter employee survey in the odd years. So we just did one of those for 2017, and that's the mode split data that you're seeing in the pie chart in the beginning of the webinar. And you're happy to reach out. Folks are wondering if they can get a copy of the 2016 program report, and yes, we can definitely do that for you. I forwarded it along to many of my clients, and if you reach out to your Commute Seattle transportation specialist, we'll be happy to forward that to you and get you some information from the past so you're able to see what you did previously and build from there. Just to note, though, that some of the questions are different for the 2018 program report, so you won't be able just to copy and paste those. Things won't add up in the survey that way. So Marley is asking a question about intranet pages dedicated to CTR info, and that's available to all employees, and she's wondering how she can report on the distribution of this info. So Marley, if you just take a screen capture of your intranet site and you want to upload it at the end of the SurveyMonkey when it asks about the program report summary, that's where you'll be able to submit that. And the JPEG or PNG or GIF file will be able to upload there. If you're having trouble uploading it, I know some folks were having problems with the upload feature in SurveyMonkey. Feel free to directly send that screenshot of your intranet site to your Commute Seattle transportation specialist, and they'll add it to your files, and you'll be good to go for the program summary. And I guess you might be also wondering how you report you're communicating with folks via an intranet site. If you go in the program report slides and we look here, so it'll be under the information and education section, and it's asking how you distribute info to employees. And the frequency of providing information. So how you distribute information to employees, the answer to that question, Marley, would be via the intranet site. And you can see that question here as well. So the availability of your ETC contact information, you can write it in as an other. And then question 8, do you distribute commuter information via? Your answer here would be an intranet site. And you're also able to take a screen capture and have that count as the optional program summary, which is a little later in the survey. So Marley is kind of following up to her question about how she would report on intranet being the method of how she communicates, and she wants to know also how she would report on the frequency of that. So Marley, my suggestion is if you're posting for example, the ETC weekly news e-blast newsletter, that would be on a weekly basis that you're communicating with employees. If you're posting things on kind of a daily basis to the intranet site, that would be a daily basis. It's all kind of dependent on how often you're providing information to the intranet site. I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but if you can dig around in your intranet site and see the last time that you were posting information to all employees, that would be able to count here for question 10 as a recent date, and also the frequency as well. And if that doesn't make sense, Marley, feel free to reach out via the chat box and we can explain that a little more. So there's still about 20 of you on the webinar, so if you've got questions, we'd love to be able to help you during the webinar, and if not, we've got our emails listed on the Commute Seattle CTR website, which is just here. If you type in commuteseattle.com/CTR, you'll be able to find all of your folks listed here, as well as in the SurveyMonkey, your transportation specialist emails and phone numbers are also listed in there as well. So we just have a few minutes left, about 5 minutes left on the webinar, and I'd just like to follow up with folks that are still here that we're going to be posting kind of a quick 3-question feedback survey in the weekly e-blast this week for your feedback on how the webinar went and what we can improve on. So look for that, and there'll be hopefully a fun little emoji slider to report on your satisfaction, something that we're pretty excited about here at Commute Seattle.